My name is Maya Bennett. I live alone in a small apartment in the western suburbs of Philadelphia. My life moves at such a monotonous pace it borders on dull. Wake up early, drink black coffee with no sugar, eat over-tasted bread, then squeeze onto the 6:30 train to the office. I work at an insurance company as a general administrative assistant. There's no fancy nameplate on the door, no high-end leather swivel chair, and no one asks for my input in major meetings. My job mostly revolves around paperwork, invoices, reports, and an old photocopier that jams constantly. Sometimes, coworkers ask if I have any plans, meaning, beyond living alone and working a job no one remembers. I just smile. Not because I don't have dreams, but because what they think I'm missing is exactly what I already have. They just don't know it. After 8 hours at the company, I return home, eat dinner alone under the soft yellow light, and begin the most important part of my day. I turn on my laptop and become a guide for millions of people learning how to heal. I'm the founder of a YouTube channel called Healing Circle, a space where those who've endured emotional wounds come to listen, share, and rediscover themselves. I don't use my real name. I don't appear on camera under stage lights. I tell stories in my real voice, drawn from my own experiences and grounded in empathy. I didn't build that community to be famous. I started it because I know what it feels like to be stripped of your voice. When I posted my first video, it had only 42 views. But one by one, they stayed. They sent messages. They shared their stories. And then they told their friends. Those also in need of a place to sit down and breathe. Today, Healing Circle has over 1.3 million subscribers. The nonprofit I founded with a small team runs free counseling programs, connects survivors with therapists, and offers emergency financial support for those leaving toxic environments. I do all of that under a different name, a hidden identity. And I've never told my family. Every night before bed, I still look at the analytics, the thank you comments, and the emails from people saying, they didn't end their lives because they found my video. But to the outside world, I'm still Maya, the quiet, slightly dull office worker with nothing special going on. They don't know a thing, and I have no intention of letting them know. At least, not yet. I've kept that secret for nearly 2 years. I hide the nonprofit certificates in a locked drawer. I store all important documents on an encrypted hard drive. My phone has a secure app just for Healing Circle. Every time I speak at a conference, I use an alias and wear a mask. Not because I'm ashamed, because I know if my family finds out, they'll try to ruin it. They'll turn a mission into a personal stain. And I can't let that happen. Because this isn't just a secret, this is my real life. I was born and raised in a family where silence wasn't a sign of peace. It was a warning. A sign that another evaluation was coming, another disapproving look, or a carefully worded remark sharp enough to cut. My father, Gregory Bennett, is 62 years old and the founder of Bennett Holdings, a luxury urban development firm with properties up and down the East Coast. In business magazines, he's always described as a visionary, the architect of wealth. But at home, he was the man who pointed straight at me when I was 11 and said, "You're not allowed to become a burden." I've never seen him smile naturally. Every expression on his face is as tightly controlled as his business operations, no room for emotion, and certainly no room for failure. He didn't want a child who understood people. He wanted an heir. I once wanted to be a writer. But he said, novelists are just educated, unemployed people. When I dropped out of college in my junior year due to depression, he cut off all financial support and simply said, then figure it out on your own. My mother, Caroline, 58, used to be the face of the classic fashion brand Winsley. In family photos, she stood out with her soft, wavy blonde hair, sharp eyes, always holding my father's hand and smiling like a lead actress in a 90s film. But when the cameras were off, Those eyes weren't gentle anymore. She didn't yell, she didn't insult, but she sighed like every one of my choices embarrassed her in front of her friends. I can't count how many times she straightened my outfit as I got out of the car and whispered, "Maya, you're really going out like that? Look at everyone else." To her, appearance was a survival weapon. And I, with dark circles from sleepless nights, a thin body worn down by financial stress, and short hair for convenience, was an aesthetic failure. There's one more person in my family. The one my parents love to brag about at every party. Avery Bennett, my younger sister. 28. Avery graduated with honors from Stanford, is now communications director at Bennett Holdings, and was recently proposed to with a diamond ring by Ethan Langston, the second son of a family that owns a 5-star hotel chain stretching from Florida to San. Avery has everything I don't, at least by my parents' standards. She has the degree, the fame, the flawless figure, the influential connections, and a wedding photo soon to be featured on the cover of the top bridal magazine on the East Coast. And what do I have? An old laptop, a 1-bedroom apartment with a cat, and a family that only calls to remind me, don't forget Avery's wedding next month. Avery once told me at a family gathering, "You should accept that not everyone is born to shine. Some people are just meant to be the background." She said it while pouring wine, smiling sweetly, as if she were offering sincere advice. I didn't respond. It hurt, of course it did, but I'd already mastered the art of covering wounds before anyone could poke them. To my parents, my existence is a faint gray line in the family success chart. What they know about me can be summed up in 3 words: divorced, infertile, and failure. They don't want the truth. They want something they can retell at the next cocktail party. They know nothing about Healing Circle. They don't know I was invited to speak at an international conference on mental health last year. They don't know I run a support fund with over 70 volunteers operating in 3 states. And they certainly don't know what I'm planning for Avery's wedding day. And I wasn't going to give them a heads up. Some truths are only meant to be revealed at the right moment. That morning, I had just finished an online meeting with the community therapy team in Oregon when I saw a delivery notification. On the box were bold capital letters. "The Bennett family cordially invites Maya Bennett to the wedding of Avery Bennett and Ethan Langston." Inside was a gold-inked invitation card in classic French style, as thick as a dissertation cover. At the bottom was a handwritten note, unmistakably Avery's handwriting, so familiar I could hear her voice in my head. "Please, don't wear dark colors, don't talk about the divorce, and don't be late. Mom and Dad don't want the guests getting the wrong idea about your personal life." An invitation? Or a warning? I wasn't sure. But I knew one thing. They still saw me as the silent pawn, the blemish they could cover with a coat of family success lipstick. I set the card down on the table, picked up my phone, and typed a message to my attorney. "It's time. Execute Plan A exactly as scheduled. Please confirm everything's legally covered." Less than a minute later, the reply came. "Fully prepared. All material is compliant with Pennsylvania and federal law. Documents, evidence, and live stream content rights ready." I checked the clock. 3 weeks left. I opened my closet. Between faded hoodies and a few plain work outfits, I pulled out a pale gray-blue linen dress. Not flashy, not expensive, but just polished enough not to draw attention and light enough to carry the most powerful weapon I had: a silence that was about to be broken. I reconfigured the entire Healing Circle live stream system. I wasn't using YouTube this time. I chose our organization's own private platform. Higher security, no chance of it being cut off mid-broadcast. A backup server in Texas, secondary route through Canada, technicians covering 3 different time zones. The night before the wedding, I made a call to Daniel Wu, my ex-husband. He was the only person in my family who had once stood up for me, until he didn't have the strength to keep going. After the divorce, he walked away, carrying wounds neither of us knew how to heal. Now, he was the CEO of Novatrace, a data encryption and cybersecurity firm. He also happened to be one of Healing Circle's silent sponsors. I called. He picked up after 2 rings. Maya? On schedule. Are you ready? Doing the final checks. The stream starts exactly at 12:10 p.m. I'm behind the entire system. No one can cut the signal except you. In the final clip, you press once. Every frame is time-stamped. No edits, no splices. I paused, then quietly said, "Thank you. For everything." Daniel was silent for a beat, then replied softly, "I couldn't protect you when you needed me. Now I'm just doing what's right. Go, Maya. It's time." I ended the call. There was no anger, no nervousness. This time, I wasn't standing alone. I opened the control app on my phone. The screen lit up. Healing Circle Live ready. I pressed and held the prep button. A simple white loading screen appeared with one line of text. The truth begins where the story was supposed to end. 3 weeks passed. On the morning of the wedding, I sat on the early train to Arlington Manor, the hotel hosting Avery and Ethan's ceremony. Guests were scattered across the sprawling lawn, white tents set up like a fashion magazine wedding spread. I stepped out of the taxi, wearing the gray blue dress, minimal makeup, carrying only a small bag. Inside the dazzling reception hall, hundreds of chandeliers sparkled from the high ceiling. A string quartet played a soft, classical melody. Each table was draped in white satin, wine glasses catching and casting glints from the guests' polished smiles. I was placed at table 14, far from the main stage. A classic courtesy invite. Next to me were 2 second cousins I hadn't seen in 6 years. No one asked me anything. They were busy discussing Avery's wedding gown fabric and my father's newest real estate portfolio. Then the MC's voice rang out, grandly announcing, "A special gift from the bride. A journey through memories." The lights dimmed. A giant LED screen lit up, showing the first images. Avery as a toddler in preschool, winning a speech contest in high school, graduating college with her flawless smile. Next came a series of family photos. Vacation snapshots, Christmas mornings, birthday celebrations. I wasn't in a single one. Not one. As if I had never existed. Then Avery's voice came in over a recording. "And finally, let's raise a toast to my sister, who taught me the greatest lesson, that sometimes silence is the only choice left for failure." The entire room erupted in laughter. On screen, text appeared. Maya Bennett, divorced, dropout, childless. Followed by an old ID photo from my insurance job. Messy hair, tired eyes, a washed-out white background. Someone behind me chuckled softly. I thought she wasn't coming. I stood up, walked toward the stage. "Excuse me, may I have a few minutes?" Avery raised an eyebrow, lips curling smugly. "Maya, this really isn't the time. I think you'd agree. Let's not make things awkward for everyone, right?" I gave a faint smile. "No, I'd actually love to clarify a few things." I took out my phone, opened the control app, pressed the button. The LED screen flickered, then changed. The Healing Circle logo appeared. Below it, a line of text. "Live. The truth about emotional abuse in American families." The live viewer count surged. 23,000, 57,000, then quickly passed 1 million. The entire hall fell silent. Every pair of eyes turned toward me. I looked around. "Good evening, everyone. My name is Maya Bennett, and today, I'm done being silent." I played the first audio recording. My mother's voice rang out, sharp and chilling. "She's a stain on this family. A woman who can't have children has no worth." Then my father's voice. "What she studied is garbage. Writing? Waste of money. If she can't keep up with Avery, she should just disappear." Guests began whispering. A few glanced at my parents. Avery's face went pale. Ethan stepped back. I continued with a second clip. From a Christmas Eve 4 years ago. I'd quietly left the kitchen and caught this exchange. Caroline, why doesn't she just leave already? She's always been a shadow. Gregory, I never really saw her as my daughter. She was my first mistake. No one said a word. I went on, this time my voice steadier, lower. For years, I endured those words and was told to stay silent so I wouldn't damage the family's image. But today, it was the family that tried to destroy mine, in front of hundreds of people. I looked directly at Avery. And if you thought you could use my pain to decorate your wedding day, then you picked the wrong sister, Avery stammered. This is edited. You're just jealous. Suddenly, the doors at the back of the hall opened. A man walked in, tall, sharply dressed, eyes piercing. It was Daniel. He walked straight to me, nodded, then turned to address the room. I am Daniel Wu. I was once Maya's husband, and I want to make something clear. Our divorce wasn't because Maya was inadequate. I left because I couldn't stand the way her family treated their own daughter. The room tensed so tightly you could hear a glass quietly set down on a table. Daniel scanned the room. And one more truth. Maya is not infertile. According to the genetic report I once had, the person with hereditary issues is Avery. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Avery stood frozen. Ethan stepped even farther back, turning toward his parents, who now stared at her in horror. 3 days after the wedding collapsed, the Healing Circle live video surpassed 9 million views on our private platform and was shared widely across major social media. Clips of the recordings, the confessions, and Daniel's appearance became headlines from The Atlantic to the New York Post. But the silence from my family said more than any official statement ever could. Gregory Bennett, my father, had once been one of the most influential figures in Northeastern real estate development. Known as the man who turned dead land into million-dollar neighborhoods, he had signed multi-million-dollar contracts with major cities to build upscale communities. But just 1 week after the wedding, 3 partner firms announced indefinite suspension of all collaborations. The reason cited: a reevaluation of ethical values and brand strategy. No one said it out loud, but everyone understood. The image of a domineering father, publicly humiliating his daughter, paired with those chilling recordings, was enough to collapse the very PR empire he had built. A Bloomberg reporter joked on a talk show. People used to buy homes just because the name Bennett was on the billboard. Now they're asking for that name to be taken down before signing. My mother, Caroline, who had once been the center of every party from New York to Palm Beach, disappeared from annual events. Many in elite circles publicly criticized how she treated her daughter. A few fashion brands, ones she had represented, quietly terminated their partnerships. One of my mother's old friends, a former local TV host, posted a status that shook me. We must learn to separate style from compassion. Not everyone in Chanel deserves your respect. No one in my family called me. Not a single message. Not one apology. They stayed silent, perhaps because they never learned how to take responsibility when life spirals outside their script. And Avery? Right after the wedding, the groom's family announced the cancellation of all formal engagement plans. Ethan made no public statement, but a source from my old college said the Langston family had no intention of attaching their name to a scandal on national media scale. Avery moved out, walked away from her role as communications director at my father's company. I heard she relocated to Vermont, rented a small cabin near a lake, and stopped posting on social media. Her Instagram, once with over 300,000 followers, was left with only a few old photos. And one final post remained. We don't choose where we're born, but we can choose how we grow from there. I reread that line for days. Not because I believed Avery was truly remorseful, but maybe she was going through a collapse of her own, like I once did. Maybe, for the first time, she had to face herself, with no one there to guide her, no parental protection, and no perfect narrative to hide behind. I stayed silent, Not out of bitterness, but because some journeys must begin in solitude. It took me nearly a decade to understand and forgive myself. I couldn't expect anyone else to do that in just a few weeks. Several journalists reached out for exclusive interviews after the incident. I declined. I didn't need the spotlight. Every morning, I still worked at the Healing Circle office, reading emails from women all over the country. One came from Seattle. I was ready to give up on this world. But when you said, "The truth doesn't need a bodyguard, only permission to be heard," I cried. And I stayed. I can't save anyone, but I can speak so they know they're not alone. As for my family, they chose to face the consequences by walking away. I didn't need to demand justice, because the truth had already done that for me. A year after the wedding fell apart at Arlington Manor, I sat in a bright room on the 16th floor of a glass building in downtown Philadelphia, overlooking Rittenhouse Square in early autumn. Yellow leaves lined the paths, and pedestrians hurried by in early winter coats. In front of me sat the first print edition of my book, titled The Last to Speak. I turned to the first page. The dedication, in my handwriting, read, "For everyone who is ever forced into silence, you are not alone." The book was a collection of true stories I had gathered from the Healing Circle community. Women from Kansas, Ohio, Michigan sent me their accounts, filled with tears and fury. I didn't edit them for commercial polish. I kept their voices raw and added brief passages explaining how we, those who've been hurt, can survive and rise again. When the publisher approached me, I agreed, under one condition. All profits would go to a legal support fund for victims of emotional abuse. They were surprised, but didn't object. 2 weeks after release, the book hit the top of the New York Times bestseller list. On television, I was invited to morning shows to talk about the invisibility of emotional wounds within families. But I didn't call myself a speaker. I was a storyteller. Daniel, who had stood by me ever since that wedding day, was now the Chief Technology Officer for Healing Circle. We didn't get back together in the traditional sense, but we shared something stronger than any relationship I'd ever had. Empathy and absolute trust. Daniel managed the digital platform, helping me build a new portal dedicated to emergency support. There, with one tap, users could connect with a counselor or access legal guidance based on where they lived. And me? I traveled everywhere. In March, I held a seminar in Chicago attended by 1,200 people, mostly teachers and social workers. In April, I stood on a TEDx stage in Denver sharing about silence in the shape of swallowing. The talk went viral, 4 million views in a week. I didn't just talk about myself. I talked about us, the underestimated, the ones labeled too sensitive, the ones dismissed as burdens in their families. In June, a university invited me as a guest lecturer for the course Nonviolent Harm in Modern Family Environments. I never thought I'd return to a classroom, especially not as the one holding the mic. But there I stood, mic in hand, looking into eyes that truly wanted to understand. Healing Circle's headquarters now had 16 full-time staff, 4 legal advisors, and a network of contributors across 9 states. We opened a new branch in Minneapolis focused on emergency intake. My desk was still the same simple wooden one by the window, with a small sign that read, "Healing doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be real." I kept my life simple. Every evening, I ate with my team, then returned to my quiet apartment on the 5th floor of an old brick building. No more dinners under judgment. No more eyes locked on someone else's success. No more running from myself. One day, I received an email from an unfamiliar address. It read, "I read your book. I don't think I'd still be here if I hadn't stumbled across that video that night. Thank you, Maya." I didn't reply right away, because I knew. When a voice that once felt small reaches the right person at the right time, it can save an entire life. And I, once made to feel invisible, had finally seen myself reflected in the eyes of millions. On a late fall Friday afternoon, as the sunlight faded through the 16th floor window of the Healing Circle office, I was editing the closing lines of my speech for an upcoming trip to Detroit when my assistant tapped gently on the door. "Maya, there's someone waiting for you in the lounge." I didn't look up. A journalist? Or an emergency client? "No, it's Avery." I froze. It had been nearly a year and a half since the wedding. I hadn't heard her voice since, and I never imagined seeing that name on an ordinary day like this. "Did she say what she wants?" "Just asked to see you. No specific request." I got up, steadying myself with a quiet breath, then stepped into the hallway. The woman sitting on the long sofa near the window wasn't the Avery I remembered. Her platinum curls were now cut short, straight and simple. She wore a beige sweater and faded jeans, with worn but clean flats. No foundation, no perfume. We looked at each other. "Would you like to come into my office?" She nodded gently and walked behind me. The door closed behind us. Silence. I didn't offer a seat. Still, she quietly chose the chair across from my desk and sat down, her hands folded in her lap. "I wasn't going to come," Avery began, "but yesterday I read your book. The Last to Speak. I read it in one night, and by the final page, I knew I couldn't keep running. There was no hatred in me, but no expectation either. I'm sorry, Maya. For everything. For the cruel things I said, for standing by and doing nothing, for even joining in." I looked into her eyes. For the first time, there was no defense, no performance, just a young woman, confused, hurting, and exhausted from pretending for too long. "I lived with Mom and Dad for 28 years, she continued, her voice trembling. "I didn't realize I was a victim too, Maya. Not at your level, but he controlled everything. The way I talked, the major I chose, who I could date. Every time I messed up, he compared me to you, like you were some kind of warning. And when I saw how badly he treated you, I stayed silent, because I was afraid that if I spoke up, I'd be next." I leaned back slightly in my chair. "I spent almost a year in Vermont," she said. "No one knew who I was. No one expected anything from me. I met a community therapy group, and one young woman there told me, 'Silence out of fear is instinct, but if you stay silent forever, you become part of the cruelty.' That line kept me awake for 3 nights. The room fell silent again. I asked, "What do you want from me, Avery?" She looked up. Her eyes were a little red. "I'm not asking for forgiveness right away. I know pain doesn't go away with an apology. I just want to know if there's a chance between us, not as perfect sisters, just as 2 women who were both hurt and are trying to start over. That will take time. I'm willing to wait," she whispered. I walked over to the counter, poured 2 glasses of water, and set one down in front of her. "Then let's start with a glass of water. No talk of the past, just today." Avery smiled gently. Her eyes shimmered, but she was calm. "Today." I walked from the station to here and realized no one noticed me. No judging looks. I felt light. I smiled. We sat there, not needing to say much, just sharing space. And in that quiet, for the first time, I felt this relationship had a chance. Not to go back, but to begin anew, grounded in truth. That day, Barnes & Noble in downtown Philadelphia was busier than usual. A long line snaked from the ground floor up the stairs, readers holding copies of The Last to Speak, a minimal white cover with one quote printed on it. "Your voice has power. Don't be silent anymore." Below it, a small name, Maya Bennett. I sat behind a long wooden table, an almost melted iced coffee by my side. The soft lighting, gentle murmurs, and the scent of new pages and readers' perfume made everything feel still and warm. Each person who came up said a few words. Some just smiled. Some held my hand. One woman whispered through tears, You helped me break a silence that lasted 10 years. I never knew what to say, except to meet their gaze and sign quickly. But under every signature, I added a line. Now, something of a signature phrase. Your voice has power. Don't be silent anymore. Daniel stayed near the corner, managing the event while taking calls about our upcoming seminar in Austin. And Avery, wearing a simple cream linen dress, quietly helped shelve books at the side table. No one in line knew who she was, and Avery didn't need them to. Every now and then, I saw her glance over at me, and then turn back, peaceful. I hadn't fully forgiven, but that weight had finally lifted. A girl around 11, wearing glasses, approached my table shyly. Her mother followed behind, gently nudging her forward. "I'd like to get this signed from my mom," the girl mumbled. "She cried after chapter 6. I looked at the mother. Her eyes, red but unwavering, told me everything before she even spoke. I signed the book, then handed it back to the girl. "Tell your mom I believe she's incredibly strong. And so are you." The girl gave a shy little motion in response. As they walked away, I heard her whisper to her mother, "Mom, I want to be brave like Miss Maya." I turned toward the large glass window, where the late autumn sun cast warm light across the display shelves. I once sat on the other side of those windows, watching events like this, thinking I'd never be enough to be invited in. Yet here I was, the one being waited for. I wasn't wearing a designer suit. There were no framed degrees behind me. But I had the one thing I was once denied in my family: my voice, and the right to use it to lift others. That night, after signing the final book, I left the bookstore and walked alone through the square. Street performers played "What a Wonderful World" on saxophone. I paused beside an elderly couple holding hands. I lingered there, letting the music drift through the Philadelphia night, and took a slow, steady breath. Fully. As if my body didn't have to shrink anymore. Not for anyone's gaze. I wasn't the daughter they once erased from every photo. Not the name they used to mock under chandeliers and champagne. I was the woman who founded Healing Circle. An author, a speaker, and above all, a survivor. Who turned silence into hope for millions. And if anyone ever asked me whether I'd go back and change anything, I wouldn't. Because that thorn-covered path taught me how to bloom. Maya's story isn't just about surviving family pain. It's a testament to the power of truth and inner strength. From someone dismissed as invisible, she became a symbol of healing for millions. Not by vengeance, but by standing tall, telling her story and opening doors for those silenced. In a world still full of judgment, Maya reminds us, your voice matters, if you dare to use it. What do you think about Maya's journey and how she faced her past? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to follow the channel for more moving stories about family, forgiveness, and hope.